There. We're going to give 2 examples, then we're going to jump into the research, then we're going to finish up the day, making sure you're where you need to be in your B3 discovery process, because you will present out in 2 modules from now. You are actually going to present out to this whole group. So we want to make sure you guys know where you're supposed to be in the process. So, as far as maintaining, when it comes to natural supports, there's no big secret to this guy. Has anybody ever volunteered for an organization? Yeah? Yes. Who said yes? Yes. What did you volunteer for, Dave?
Special Olympics, Livingston County.
Why?
Because there was a need, and there was a select few people being served every year, and I said, damn it, this is for all developmentally disabled people in the county. I expanded it exponentially. Exponentially?
It's a word.
I said that right?
They get close.
Bush is in their office. I didn't know if I could make up a word. Anyway, oh, stay focused. And I need to make it big for everybody to be involved. I realized that, I see why it was just small. It would have been easier to run.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's never without
So I should leave that one through.
All right, so most people that volunteer, they do it because they get something back, either internally or externally. What I do find with natural supports is that's true. That's like part of what, it's the reason why people come back over and over again, is because they themselves are getting something out of it. So when we talk about maintaining, there's really not a whole bunch of extra things to do here. At ATA, they had an Employee of the Month thing, and so Abe was really good about recognizing both Greg and Jeff, and making sure that they got into the rotation quite a bit. Some of the other maintaining things that we've been watching lately, especially after last weekend, is this pools, the lotto pools, the sports pools. It's a really cool medium by which you wouldn't think about it, but there is a lot of gambling going on out there that's probably very illegal. And then league opportunities, like if there's stuff for softball or whatever, where they play after work or go and do stuff after work together. That's a really nice way to maintain some of this. So let's give you an example. This is Drew. I think Kelly alluded to this in behavior. We're going to walk you through his whole plan. So started off as a work experience with natural support. So this is Johnny and Drew when they were in 3rd grade, and this is Johnny and Drew when they're adults. So Johnny's been a link all the way through. Basor, jump in here whenever you want. So Basor was the caseload teacher. Lisa and I continue to consult with Drew and his team. Johnny continues to show up for every one of those meetings. It's absolutely amazing. He's a junior? Senior at Michigan State. Comes over and helps out. And no one's paying Johnny this. This is not, it's just part of what Johnny does.
Johnny just got accepted into the ABA program.
Did he get it? That's awesome. He just got accepted into the ABA program over at Michigan State, so that's really cool. So, before we talk about what Drew's work looked like, Johnny sent us running for an essay to get into college. So this is what this kid writes about Drew. And he called it elementary empathy, and Johnny's smarter than both Lisa and I combined. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah, we can put both of our heads together and we still wouldn't even come close. So here, Drew came to my school when we were in 4th grade. His parents decided to make the switch because my district has a better special ed program than the one that he came from. Drew has autism. In 2004, I knew none of this. Far shorter and much less experienced in the ways of the world, I sat in class on my first day of 4th grade, completely unaware of the change to come. When it did arrive, it was in the form of Drew. As I lounged in my seat, filling a 2-person table with my sprawled possessions, Drew strode into class with his long, lopping strides. He's always given off an air of being taller than he truly is, and his presence is felt immediately upon entering the room. Between this and his abnormal behavior, he was the center of attention the minute he stepped into Mrs. Cooper's class. Drew was an anomaly. He flapped his hands while making odd faces, babbled incoherently and incessantly, and would occasionally yell or cry in the middle of a lesson. This didn't sit well with the uneducated, rule-following 9-year-old self, so when Drew plopped down next to me, I was justifiably curious. At the time, I wasn't a forgiving person, quick to judge, and impossibly stubborn. Someone I didn't understand would often, irrevocably and unfairly, earn my ear. But Drew and his actions were so alien to me that I was willing to overlook his perceived faults to understand what compelled him to act as he did. I soon discovered that the odd faces were attempts at copying expressions he made from his favorite television characters, and that his babbling were quotes from these characters that he used to communicate, and that he screamed and cried in class because he was frustrated but didn't know how to properly express his feelings. I learned that autism is a social disorder affecting communication and behavior. People with autism have great difficulty expressing their thoughts and feelings, tending to fixate on a few ideas or actions and repeating their behavior rigidly. With understanding came camaraderie. What began as curiosity developed into a long-lasting friendship and a lesson in elementary empathy. Befriending Drew awakened a part in me that had lain dormant for 9 years. Never before had I truly understood the depth of another person's difficulties. But in 4th grade, I began to comprehend that my struggles with long division were paltry when compared to the effort it took for Drew to learn how to communicate without his beloved quotes. The pain of others resonated with me for the first time. I pride myself today on my ability to see circumstances from another point of view, to be patient and understanding of the adversities faced by others. I know that I would not possess these skills without Drew. As we prepare to graduate this spring, Drew remains one of my closest friends, and I'm forever in his debt for what he's taught me. So we keep saying that it's good for both populations. It is good, because he's getting as much out of this as Drew is getting out of it. So let's fast forward a little bit. Anything with that, Lisa? Besides the tears? Okay. So in 2012, Margie and myself went down to see Lisa over at Hazlitt High School, and in attendance were so Margie and myself, Drew, his parents, his older brother, a CMH worker, 11 links, a principal, a special ed director, special ed teacher, and a CLS worker. All we did is we just told the dilemma that was facing Drew, which is he didn't have a summer job. And when you tell that to kids that are graduating from high school, they cannot believe that someone's not going to work this summer. And I don't know, and I don't speak for Lisa or Margie, but it was like over their dead bodies, this kid going to sit around and do nothing. I don't know if there's this competition thing or whatever. So we just went to the board. So Margie started writing stuff down, and we just said, what do you think would be really good for Drew? Well, these kids were absolutely amazing. I'll never forget that one girl said zoo, and then this other kid swung his head around and says, he hates the sound of birds. A zoo would not, like they knew so much about him. So then what it turned out to be is it turned out that he ended up working as a district custodian, and he took care of all the cleaning in the summer months, which was when they have to clean up all the stuff. Now, when I say custodian, you guys go, ugh. No. Drew loved to clean more than life itself. Like, this was a privilege for him to get to do this. He can't stand when stuff is not where it's supposed to be. Second thing that we try to do is give a job over at City Limits, which is a bowling alley near them. And then what we did is we tried to train the staff. So, Basor's Parapro put this together, and so it was his understanding of what would happen throughout Drew's day, so that he had an understanding of where he was supposed to be, who he was going to report to. And so what we did throughout this whole process, because they went into a grant with Hazlitt, and so we were able to interview all the sections throughout the process. So here's the original meeting with Drew's potential employer. Her name's Diane Ross. That is funny stuff to me.
Yes.
So we're so excited.
I really wanted to.
And they're great.
I was so glad.
That's cool. So what's going to happen is Denise is going to help us out with all the initial. So I think it deters our trying to get her oriented to about what's to happen. So then what we did is we went with her, followed her around. Did you hear what she kept saying? Whatever he wants to do. No. If you let Drew do what he wants to do, he'd find the Mountain Dew machine and never leave it. So no. So we got to make sure that she understands he's there to collect a paycheck. So Denise and I are just kind of wandering around.
There you go.
Well, you had some fun though.
Oh, no, it's
They're doing something for themselves. Yes.
It was White Shorts Day, if you didn't have white shorts join us. And then walking through the environment to make sure that we have everything that we need.
First? Yes, as soon as he sees it, then we're going to figure it out. So everything back, no, but he'll want to move it, and he'll be okay if Johnny says to him too, okay, if he gets the big stuff. The stuff he's able to pick up on the way, he'll pick that up, throw it in the trash, because he's going to want to move the table between the bag. So, okay, but just let it go ahead, just let him go the big stuff, he'll take the big stuff and then, yeah. Part of the way that I just, he does that, like, stuff on the floor, so we're just not.
So Denise is letting us know the underbelly of what's going to happen here, and if that vacuum doesn't get run first, this ain't going to happen. I can't wash any tables because there's junk on the floor here. So we're just trying to let Diane know that this might not look as traditional as you might see it in other places, but it's not that he can't get the work done, it's just that it's just not going to look the exact same. The next one is his first day. Drew was pretty beefed up his first day, and what the district did, which I thought was really amazing, is they hired Johnny not as a job coach, they hired Johnny as a custodian also. So they're natural supports together. There's not a hierarchy here of one person trying to tell the other person what to do.
Share. Share.
We're all done with this room.
No.
So can you come here? We're gonna check on it. Alright, you're gonna do it. Up next then.
Right.
Next in Scott. Perfect. Alright, now we're gonna go hang the little sign on the doorknob right here. Right here.
So one thing that Kelly actually figured out way early on, I think it was Applegate too, is that he would start the next day and start cleaning the same room he had just cleaned. So Kelly and I stayed in hotels all the time, so we went and stole all those stuff, all those things that you hang on the door, and then it would say cleaned by Drew. So like at the very end, I don't have that one in here. Anyway, it would just say, cleaned by Drew, and then he would know that one was done. We didn't have to go back to that one in order to make that happen. So that's what Johnny was having him do. We did develop a crisis plan for Drew. There's the assignment here, sorry, cleaned by Drew. And they just hung on the doors that he had already completed. And we had this mixed up, and so in the new plan, it goes to vacuum, then it does tables, dust, move all the tables, and then vacuum a second time. So he actually did 2 vacuums because he couldn't stand when there was stuff on the ground. So here's the crisis plan. First thing that Johnny would do is call his mom, Drew's mom, and then we just removed all the work-related materials. He had a break area, so he knew exactly where he was supposed to do. The most hysterical thing is the crisis plan was never used, not once. So, and it went pretty well. So Kelly came in to kind of do another look on the situation to help, and then we kind of wrote the plan up that looked like this. And then one thing that we found is that he kept wanting to be done faster than he was really done. So what we did is we just marked off however many tables that were in the room. So if there's 12 tables that he needed to be done, then he would cross off, and all of them were crossed off. He knew that the tables were cleaned. So here's our data, which was pretty significant. He worked 27 total days. We had to have a substitute for Johnny one time. Out of those 27 days, he missed 2 days. One was for us because he presented at one of our START conferences, and the other day was the 4th of July, which you gotta give the guy some breaks here because everybody else is off on the 4th of July. The entire time he was working, he had 11 requested breaks. He left the work area 0 times, or left the work, meaning going home 0 times. So his data was pretty cool. So that summer opportunity led into a paid position. So now he works 15 hours a week using the natural setting. And his mom and dad are like, he's a taxpayer and he's gonna do his job. And so then what happened is from there, and Lisa jump in, is it you or somebody went into Planet Fitness, Liz, and found him a job there. So he's there about 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I don't know if you know anything about Planet Fitness, but they have yellow and purple washcloths that are at each one of black and purple. The black, just like in that picture I got. I'm quick, really quick. And so it's either a black day or a purple day, so you have to replace all these towels every time. So when people are cleaning off the machines after they're done, they have to be continuously replaced. You can imagine that's a lot of laundry that has to get done. And so Drew's taking care of all the towels. And then he replaces them like here, and he has to do that. And that takes quite some time. At least the day I was there, it took like about an hour and a half because there's thousands of machines laying everywhere. And then he also does some laundry for them. And he likes to do, yeah, he does love to do laundry. And then, so we were pretty intrigued by this. He currently works there. And again, myself, Basor, Denise, and Johnny, we continue to meet with MRS and CMH to figure out how we're going to continue to support what this is going to look like long term. I don't think any of us know where it's all going to go. One of the things that Basor and I came up with, and that Kelly actually has been using, I think she used with you guys, and if you want to jump in, feel free. But what we found is when we were going to the board, it was really complicated because everything was falling back on the district. So it's the district, it's the district, it's the district, and it's like, no, this is a team. And if we expect this kid to have employment, we better count on the team. So what we did is we went to the board and we gridded out the student, the family, peer-to-peer supports, district, ISD, MRS, CMH, and any other supports. And then we wrote across the top what those would look like so that everybody had to pick up a piece of this stuff. Casey, do you want to talk about your experience? I'm going to let you speak.
I would just say that in the initial meeting, we discovered that there were lots of resources not being capitalized on in the community, and we had a follow-up meeting just a couple weeks ago for case managers being switched because he's not happy that we are asking them to do what they need to do for her. So there should be some additional ABA services for her, additional community living supports hours. So it was, thanks, Kelly.
So Kelly, do you want to add anything to this? Because there is not, this is neither, and it's not the format of this, it's a way to get information down so that not one group, ISD, district gets stuck doing the whole thing.
I think there's different ways to do it too. We chose to go with the schedule, so we actually had the schedule down the left-hand side, and across the top are all the agencies that could potentially provide support. So we had CLS, CMH, the school, MRS, all the agencies across the top, and then we just started talking about, you know, when you look at the outcomes on the IEP and the goals that we have, what things does her schedule. It wasn't like we needed it to be in order of how it's going to lay out, but what components need to be in her schedule. So it was like she's going to need some time in an integrated job opportunity. So that's all we put, and then all right, what supports could be possibly available. And MRS jumped in, and we could provide some job coaching, and CLS jumped in and said, well, we have this program or this program. And so there were some times where in the category, somebody from every agency was actually providing some level of support. That's the kind of cross-collaboration that we're gonna need to really provide seamless transition. And so it was cool in that regard. And so there's different ways to do it. This is the way Maureen did. She can describe hers. But I think it's all about really rating all the resources that are available and ensuring that something is available in each part of that day to get the outcome that you're looking for.
So we will be putting something like this up on the website at some point. Kelly and I are trying to, because we don't want to lead you down the wrong path. So she's going to have the one that they used with Lapeer, I'm going to use the one that we used with Basor. We're going to have as many of these as we, because we don't want you to go, oh my gosh, we did it wrong. There's no right or wrong way except to not have everybody on the board so that everybody understands they have some level of responsibility here. Cool. All right. Any questions about that? Okay, so the next area that we're going to look at is now the research. So we stumbled across most of this stuff, but now I want to share with you it is backed up by research. Yay! That's always important. So now I'm going to show you what the research says as far as natural supports and what that looks like. We talked a little bit about this earlier, that they're really looking at the cultural and environmental assessment versus the job assessment. Did you notice we were talking to Diane, the lady who was going to oversee Drew's job? Were we interviewing her more so than we were trying to figure out the environment? Were we giving her information about Drew more than we were really worried about what the expectations she had? Because we can break that stuff down. We know how to do that. But what we needed was for Diane to understand certain things and to help her coach through it. So it's really an alternative to what the traditional job coaching. So how can we look at this, supporting people in employment opportunities differently? That means that we start with the least amount of support, not the most amount of support. And traditionally, in this model, the job coach is the most restrictive. Just like in parapros are more restrictive than not having a parapro. So you want to think about it from that standpoint. So what would this look like? So obviously working independently without any supports or strategies would be the most, or the least amount of support. Now, I'm going to suggest you, Rebecca, or Therese, or Kelly, not one person in this world can do this without some level of visual supports. Am I right? Do you have a calendar? Do you have a phone? Do you have the phone numbers of the people you need to call? There's all kinds of things. So everybody already is at the second level, which would be work independently with visual supports. Then you think of the next one, which is working independently with self-management systems and visual supports, working independently with visual management, visual supports, and job coach to train the person to the systems. And then the last one would be working, and this is the most dependent, is working but dependent on the job coach. Does that make sense to everybody? But we've almost inverted this. We almost in some ways thought we should start here to do all this. And really and truly, we should be starting here without that adult there to see what that person can do. So, and the other idea behind this was, in the traditional mindset, was the job coach will fly in. We're going to help Aaron learn how to do this job, and then Aaron will do this 100% without any visual, self-management, anything. And that's just simply not true. You're going to leave a system behind, so you might as well teach to the system first, and then bring the job coach in if you have to, rather than the opposite way that we've been doing it. So, rarely is this true for a person. Again, I don't think it's true for any person. Will that person be completely independent without the need of visuals or a self-management system? But to do this, we first have to understand. We have to reconsider what we're currently doing as far as the job analysis, and again, focusing on the cultural analysis of the employment environment rather than focus on the job analysis. So Mark Good and Associates, if you're interested in this information, they've put out probably more stuff on natural supports and more information in the form of white papers. And if you want to see what this looks like, you can just Google Mark Gold and Associates. But they always talk about the features of the naturalness and how do you gain access to that and what the individual needs are and assure that the needs of the individual are met. So you've got two responsibilities. One is how do you get in there, what is already in there that makes sense, and then the second one is what does that person come to the table with and actually need. And they call it a 7-phase of sequencing, a sequence for balancing naturalness and individual needs. Now, I was telling Kelly about this. I don't like the word ways. Like, it drives me crazy. Like, determine natural ways. So I'm gonna let you interpret it the way you need to interpret it, but for me, what they mean is determine natural environments, natural, what's already in that environment, and natural things within that environment that make sense. So, how do they determine the natural ways? So they still get a step-by-step procedure, looking at the culture of the workplace, the manner in which the workers interact, the managerial style of the setting, and other features that make this place unique. So when we got into ETA, it was pretty clear that was a pretty cool place because that manager, that CEO, he was constantly, great sense of humor. You could tell the other employees liked him. So you're in there kind of observing all the other things in the environment except the job. Does that make sense? Because you don't want to stick somebody in a place that has a really mean temperament to it. Like, nobody would want to work there, correct? All right, do you guys need a break? Because like, I could blather on about this stuff for a good couple more hours. How about if we take a break, we'll come back in about 15 minutes.